artificial intelligence. And can we use it to make life easier for our customers contacting us through the contact center? Um, yes, there is. We call it conversational AI, and Quovim is happy with our partner Genesis to bring you some thoughts on that today. So let's talk. So we begin with the model of language, how people speak. And we'll tell you that when two people talk, they use what we call natural language, simple, what I'm doing now, natural human expression. So let's take a look here at what used to happen back in the day when Mrs. Smith called the Acme product corporation, the folks you're all familiar with from Bugs Bunny cartoons. She called Acme, and Helen, the switchboard operator, answered. And she said, "Hi, and welcome to Acme Corporation, inventor of the jet-powered tennis shoes. How may I help you today?" And Mrs. Smith stated that, "Well, I think there's a problem with my bill." Helen was quite surprised to hear this. "A problem with your bill? What seems to be the trouble?" "Oh, I was supposed to get a discount," said Mrs. Smith. "Oh dear, let me get you to accounting right away." And she pulled out a few plugs and plugged in a few plugs and got her to Mildred down in accounting, who was shocked that no discount had been applied. And so let's take a look at what really happened here. So the characteristics of a human-to-human conversation, there's clarity. Things can get resolved quickly. One hopes that there's a constant courtesy and empathy on the part of both callers, and things can go fairly efficiently. Unfortunately, for a company to deploy two employees for a single call, that's kind of pricey. So that lasted as long as it lasted until somebody came along and invented a software solution, which we call IVR, or interactive voice response. So let's take a look at this same situation when Mrs. Smith calls Acme Corporation and hits an IVR. The IVR answers the phone and says, "Thank you for calling Acme Corp. Our menu options have recently changed, so please listen carefully for the beep before making a selection. Your call is important to us. For our opening hours, say opening hours or press 1. And this goes on for a little while, and Mrs. Smith gets a little bit tired of it, and after a little while she hits 0 because she wants to talk to somebody, and nothing happens because she hadn't heard the beep yet. And this goes on for a little while longer, and Mrs. Smith is getting a little frustrated, hits 0 again. Finally, she hears, say other options, or press 9, hears the beep, and she hits that 9 pretty hard. And that leads to another menu. The IVR says to her, "You've selected other options. To report a lost or stolen Acme Fidelity card, say lost card or press 1. And this goes on for a little while until Mrs. Smith hears to speak to an operator or a representative, say operator, or press 0. She hits 0 pretty hard. And finally, when she hears that beep, she hits 0 a bunch of times. She is not pleased any longer. At this point, the IVR responds to her and says, "Please wait while we transfer you to our next available representative. Our current wait time to speak to an agent is 18 minutes." And then some music starts to play. And by now, Mrs. Smith is gritting her teeth in frustration. So what happens here? So the characteristics here are, there's some good news. Services are automated. And that is nice because this is an inexpensive use of company resources. On the other hand, the interactions are menu-based. So the interaction is driven by the IVR, and not by the customer. Navigation isn't always great. In this example, you can see navigation took 3 menus. You might think I'm making this up, but we've all experienced this or worse. Options are not always placed conveniently for the given call. We try, but we don't always, place them conveniently. And there are sometimes some pretty lengthy waits, leading to user frustration. And ultimately, excuse me, as happened in this case, the automation rate wasn't great. We ultimately did have to go to an agent anyway. But the really important factor I'd like to point out to you is that the automation, the interaction is driven by the IVR and not by the caller. So what do we do about that? Well, I think we'd all agree that natural language is just nicer. So let's take a look at some conversational AI in the form of chatbots and voice bots. These are applications that understand natural human speech, natural language, and they can make sense of what we say, inferring intent, the subject we're talking about, and even some connected information sometimes. So there are two forms. First is a chatbot. It's text-based. This image is a little bit blurry, but it's the kind of thing that would appear on the screen of your phone or the screen of your computer. And the chatbot opens up and says, hello there, what can I do for you today? The user types in, find me a clinic near me. And in response to that, the chatbot puts up a page showing the Get Well Soon clinic nearby, even with the opening hours and its level of occupancy at different times of the day. A chatbot can do that. A voice bot is a similar beast, but it handles actual human speech. So for instance, when this woman calls the hospital to order flowers for her sister who's just had a baby, the chatbot can take that text and respond very cleverly. So, she said her sister and just had a baby. Well, there's a cue to say congratulations to your family. How about a special newborn joy bouquet? It can check, this being an application, it can check the delivery times available and says we can deliver those flowers to room 206 this afternoon. This is an example of some very good user experience design. But the important thing that I'd like to point out is that the initiative is now back in the hands of the customer. So no more lengthy waits. So let's go through another exercise here and take a look at Mrs. Smith calling Acme Corporation again. She will hit a voice bot this time. She's still a little unhappy about the call she had with the IVR, so she's not in a great mood. And when she dials up, she hears, hello and welcome to Acme Corporation, home of the jet-powered tennis shoes. How can we help you today? Mrs. Smith responds tersely, there's a problem with my bill. Chatbot hears that. It says, the voice bot, I should say, hears that and says, okay, a problem with your bill. I see in your file that you that you recently purchased a box of earthquake pills. Yeah, that's a big seller at Acme Corp. Surprised, Mrs. Smith has had her recent purchase acknowledged and says, yes, exactly, but I didn't get the 15% discount you promised. The chatbot voice bot hears that and says, you're right, no discount was applied. I can fix, shall I credit your account? So this is an interesting conversation. And of course, Mrs. Smith is pleased and says, of course, certainly, yes, thank you. Now, let's take this apart and see what happened here. So first of all, we're talking to a voice bot. So there are no menus. We don't impose lengthy waits on users. We want our users, our customers, our callers in this case, to simply state their business. Why are you calling? How can I help you? What can I do for you today? The answer is understood as an example of natural language and free expression. And then the voice bot employs some pretty good user experience design. First thing, you echo back the user's concern. Okay, a problem with your bill. It can take a look at the customer history and see what recent activity has gone on and says, well, I see that you purchased a box of earthquake pills. Displaying empathy, of course, is important. You want your applications to always be respectful and empathic. You're right. And finally, check out some business rules. Mrs. Smith is a very good customer. We're going to offer her that discount. Sure, I can fix that. Shall I credit your account? A much more effective and humane interaction. The kind of thing we'd like to be able to offer to all of our customers. And increasingly now, with using this technology, we can offer this kind of an experience. And notice it didn't have to go to an agent. So yeah, free expression and saving agent time. So at this point, you might be wondering, how exactly do we achieve this understanding of natural human expression of natural language? And it's done using an artificial intelligence technique known as machine learning. It was invented in the 1950s. We may remember perhaps examples of it in the 1990s when IBM's Deep Blue beat Garry Kasparov, I think it was, the chess champion. And the technique that was used there was not a rule-based approach to chess. It was, having examined thousands and thousands of games, it applied machine learning to come up with its own strategies. So and now in the last few years, it's become available for commercially to people to use this kind of technique. It needs a lot of data. You have to be able to examine a whole lot of different scenarios and parse them, build them into something called a neural network that's inside the machine learning engine itself. It employs some fairly sophisticated mathematics. But the key, of course, is the data. So we're talking about real world data and the data that's pertinent to the application we're building. Real world data, there's a lot of that out there. And many of this, or all of the machine learning engines out there come packaged with that. The key though is how do we build up a set of data that represents your application. Let's have a look at that. And I see there's already a question in the Q&A, which I'm grateful for. Thank you. I can't wait to get there. So your app's data. So first of all, data, you build it into something we're calling a corpus. What is a corpus? Well, you take your data and you have to come up with a collection of the intentions that people express when they're reaching out to you. A dentist will have a collection of intents, typically to do with mental matters. An insurance people will want to maybe ask for quotes or report problems. But the point is, you need a lot of examples that. So having that, you feed that into the machine learning engine, and as it receives input from your users, it can come back with concise results, change of address, lost card, or maybe book appointment. We're going to look at that in a little more detail. So your application's data, what does it look like? Well, for a change of address, you might have people saying, I need to change my address, or I have a new address, or I'm moving. I don't live there no more. You'll notice that in those examples, only 2 of them had the word address, and only 1 of them actually said change address. So human beings have a tendency to be a little bit unpredictable on how they're going to express any given need or intention. That's one example. Let's look at lost cards, for instance. I think my card was stolen. I can't find my card. I lost, or my son lost my card. Can you just send me a new card? All of these would relate to a situation where people might have lost their card. Booking appointments. I'd like an appointment. Pretty easy. If you're a dentist and you receive a call that says, I have a toothache, that means that person probably needs an appointment. Your website said I should come and see you. When can I meet with my advisor? These are all ways in different contexts of expressing the need to book an appointment. Now, where do we get the raw data for this corpus? Well, we know that every single contact center in the world keeps meticulous records. Every contact that comes to it, with full transcriptions and recordings, and every call is tagged with a reason. And so that's a great source for building up a corpus. If, on the other hand, you live in the real world and the data keeping isn't quite that up to date, well, it doesn't matter. There are recordings. Go to the recordings, listen to them, transcribe them, and build up your corpus from those. If you don't have recordings, well, there's a way of getting them. You could deploy an application that simply says, how can I help you? And then immediately transfers the call to an agent. You don't want to leave this out there for very long, but while it's out there, it's recording what people say. You take that, you give it to your transcribers, and they list it all out, and you can build up your corpus from there. Again, you don't leave this thing running very long, but for a short period of time, in order to get enough of a sampling to build up a corpus, that's a strategy that's used quite a lot. On the other hand, if you don't have any means of getting recordings, you can always rely on your SMEs, your subject matter experts, your people from within the organization who understand what is being offered, who can make good educated guesses about how people will ask for different services. You can build up a fairly, well, not a hugely robust, but a beginning of a corpus with that. You deploy this, and you then tune based on the real world data that you receive. It doesn't take a lot of data to start seeing some really nice results. For each intent, you're not looking at thousands and thousands of different recordings at all. You're looking at tens, if you want to be really thorough, a few tens. I won't even say hundreds. It's hard to know exactly how many, but you can build up a corpus with data from the real world, and start making your recognition engines pretty robust pretty quickly. So that's the data side of artificial intelligence, conversational AI. In the end, of course, you've got to bring all this together. So there are solutions that do the interpretation, the understanding of the natural language, that are available online from some very reputable companies: IBM, Microsoft, Amazon, Google. There are even solutions that you can have on-prem from a company called Rasa. Here we're going somewhat against the arguments that Randall was making earlier, but it is a possibility. And these packages, they come packaged with real world data and all that sophisticated math that I was talking about. What we do is we simply feed them in your own data from the corpus. And then, having done so, we know we can get good recognition of natural language. We need to tie it all together. So we need to worry about things like any project: requirements gathering, user experience design, integrating everything into your own existing architecture, and then developing the applications. And the folks that do this need to be concerned with things like, well, designing front ends and writing the right connectors to back end systems. So that's really where we're coming from at Covim. Our services are such that we can connect to any of these services, and of course custom tie in to the existing infrastructure in your environment, and make it all live within the Genesis cloud. I'm coming to a conclusion. I see the time is pretty good. I hope we can have some robust conversation after this. To sum it up, we recognize that contact centers are pretty complex entities. There's a lot going on there. You've got to worry about a bunch of things: skills management, clearly, call routing, setting up your agent queues and managing those. You may be doing web chat within your contact center. There are obviously traditional IVRs out there. You probably have some callback services or even outbound call campaigns. You're probably answering a certain amount of email in your contact center. The new player on the block, however, is this more natural, higher performance entity known as a bot. Chatbots and and voice bots that can help your users automate more of their activity, more of their needs, and do it in a way that is convivial for them, that they feel things move along naturally, and they can get to a conclusion with an automated service more frequently than they would necessarily with an IVR, or naturally back when Mrs. Smith called Helen at Acme Corp. The lessons we can draw from this are that a voice bot and a chat bot can give the initiative back to your customers. They state their needs and get the answers they need without having to wait, without having to listen to menus, without having to navigate 2 and 3, 4 levels down. We can provide a really exceptional UX experience to our callers and our users. We do need to organize our data, that's a given, but we can reach out to technologies that are delivering these results today from some pretty big players. And the cost of these is really nominal. We're talking about fractions of cents for each interaction. So having all that, well, of course, you need to bring it all together, and that's where we hope we can help you. So I leave you with one final question, and I hope that you will come back to me with, and Randall, with many questions too. Really, shouldn't we be talking? Thank you for your attention.